Grounded is a simple game, and I honestly think it's nothing special. Let's talk about why that is, though. Grounded has been in early access for 2 years and was probably in development for about as long beforehand. I'm not entirely sure on that, but that's just what I would surmise. Now, let's see if all of that time in early access paid off. Grounded is a first-person or third-person story-based survival game where you play as one of 4 kids who have been shrunk down to as small as insects and dumped into a backyard. You must collect different resources from throughout the backyard and from different bugs to craft items to help you survive in the backyard. You also need to find out what happened to you and how to get back to your regular size. And you may want to beware of all the insects because most are gonna want to kill you. That is the basis of Grounded. So how much time have I sunk into the game? I think it's somewhere between like 10 to 20 hours. I know this is supposed to be a 10-hour impression series, but it's a survival game, and I like to give those some more time just in case there's a new mechanic that pops up after a good ways through. I've been playing the game with Chase, Mike, and Ryan, so my view is mostly from a multiplayer perspective because I don't think the game would be as fun single player. And we are still in the first garden section story-wise. We climbed up to the upper garden area by kind of cheesing and building stuff to get around the blockage, but we haven't gotten up there with the story. Our current quests are the Haze and the Black Ant Lab. And if I was going to compare this game to any other game that I've played, I think it's most comparable to Raft. And I think as I talk about the mechanics of the game, I'm pretty sure you're going to see why. There are a lot of good things about Grounded, but there are also some bad and annoying things about the game. One of the best things about Grounded are that its mechanics are simple but proven for survival games. It uses a lot of the general templates for survival games, especially when it comes to their survival management system. The survival management systems are simple and are just like every other survival game. Use items to keep your health, water, and hunger above 0 so you don't die, and manage your stamina when you're doing things like chopping down grass to get materials or fighting bugs so you don't get killed by the giant insects that want to kill you. The 2 hardest parts of this whole survival system are the stamina and the hunger parts. Stamina is used for everything from sprinting to jumping to attacking and blocking. Learning how to manage that with each of the different weapons is the key to surviving in this game. I don't want to talk about hunger right now. I want to talk about that in the later half of the video when I talk about things I don't like about the game, because there are a few aspects I'm not a fan of. Actually, hunger is really the only one I'm not a fan of. But let's get to the other parts of the system. The other parts are very easy to manage. Water is abundant when it comes to like the morning when you need it most if you're sleeping at night, because sleep makes you very hungry and very dehydrated, so each morning you have to go out and find water and food. But with water being so abundant on the grass blades, it's fairly easy to fill your bar back up. And health is your usual health system. Keep it above 0 to live and use healing items or food to refill it, or, just die and respawn wherever you set your spawn at most recently. Hopefully somewhere close. The building system, from what little I've used of it, is very simple and easy to use because everything snaps into place after you place down your first floor or wall. Most of the building we left to Chase because that's what he likes doing, so I didn't really play with it that much except for building a small shelter by the pond. It's a decent system, but it would be nice to be able to turn off the snapping for some objects like pillars so that you could place them where you want instead of at the corner of an adjacent block. It could just be placed somewhere that you actually need it, but that's a small nitpick. Movement and crafting in Grounded are your super simple, normal mechanics that you would expect from a survival game. Movement, it feels good in first person. I haven't really played the game in third person enough to know how that feels with a different camera or being able to judge distances and ranges with that. And it's just your usual basic movement system. There's a good weight to the characters, but it's nothing special. And the crafting mechanics are very basic for a survival game. Get the materials, use the specific workstation to craft it, or craft it in your inventory if it's possible to do that. And and you get the item and you can use it. Simple and straightforward, normal crafting, what you would expect from a survival game crafting system. Combat in Grounded is probably the most complicated mechanic because of the amount of weapons and having to manage different things. Each bug has its own strength and weaknesses, and once you peep at them, look at them through your hand binoculars and mark them, you can learn each's weaknesses and craft a weapon to use against them. Some of the insects, like ladybugs and roly-polies, are weak to bludgeoning or breaking weapons, while others are like weak to stabbing weapons. Once you learn what the enemies are weak against, you can build a weapon of that type and deal greater damage to them. And actual combat is very simple, like every other mechanic in this game. You only have your normal attack and a block, both of which use stamina, and your stamina can run out quickly if you're not managing it that well. To go along with the block, you have a perfect parry system that's all about timing your block with the enemy's attack. This will cause less stamina loss and negate health damage, but it does still cost stamina, so you could be knocked down or winded because of it. Combat feels like there's a good amount of weight behind the enemies because of their size, and this is what makes some of them scary as hell to fight. Speaking of enemies, I love the enemy design in the game. I think they made the game terrifying because of how big a lot of the bugs are compared to you, but it's still great design because of the variety of these enemies. I think from what we've played, we've only discovered like a third of the enemies that we could find in the game, so I'm interested to see what's coming up in terms of different bugs and variations of bugs. And to add to that variety, unless the enemy is of the same type, most bugs don't have the same attacks except for like a general biting attack. Most of them do have a special type of attack or effect that they can inflict or use, and it makes learning about them all the more important. Like wolf spiders can use poison, roly-polies can roll into a ball and slam into you and basically take away all of your stamina if you don't dodge, so that will knock you down. And a lot of them have their different attack patterns, and it is a large variety of enemies. And even though the enemies, they aren't really part of the story, they're just there kind of as fodder and to add a bit of a challenge to the game and just something to do. They do make enough of them that it is very interesting. And speaking of the story is so far, it's interesting, but there haven't really been any memorable moments in it. The labs are interesting with some of their variety, but they're mostly just puzzle areas with a reward at the end, and they're basically fetch quests. I don't think they're bad sections, but I would kind of like a combat test or like a waved attack on the lab just to add in a bit more variety to those quests. So that's the stuff I like about the game. It's a simple game, and in terms of design, I don't think it has many problem areas. The only thing within the game that I think most of us found annoying is the food degradation. Because of how fast food degrades in the game, there have been multiple times where I've made multiple pieces of food to go into a lab or go on an adventure, and I felt I needed to eat multiple pieces because they were going to expire soon. I know there's jerky in the game that you can make, but I'm pretty sure it's less effective than just eating cooked food. And even though with the upgrade system, food can become less necessary, and maybe there's something in the later crafting progression that will let us keep the food for longer, like a refrigerator type machine, I personally just don't think food degradation needs to be in the game because of how casual of a feel Grounded has. It feels like it's an unnecessary thing to have in there because the game feels very casual. And there is one other major problem with the game, but this is outside of the game, and it's almost the same problem that we had with Dying Light 2 at the beginning when we played it. The servers. I have been kicked from the game every night that we've played at least 1 to 4 times. It has been the single most frustrating part of the game. And from what I've heard, Grounded has had this problem since they launched in early access 2 years ago. And I don't understand why it hasn't been addressed. Maybe, I know a patch came out today because I'm recording this on Thursday, right before it comes out on Friday. I know a patch came out. I haven't looked at the patch notes. Maybe they have addressed this, but currently it has not been addressed. And you have had this game out for early access for 2 years, and it's had these server problems. With the developers being Obsidian Entertainment and the publisher being Xbox Game Studios, you would think that they could have improved their servers when or if people started complaining about it in early access. For us, our normal session time is about 4 to 5 hours, and we'll normally get kicked from the server at least twice during that time, maybe more. I'll be honest, I'm not somebody that understands everything about servers and connections and how it all works with games, games, so I don't really want to comment on it too much, but it is the single most frustrating thing that I have experienced with Grounded. I said at the beginning of the video that Grounded is nothing special. It's not a bad game, but it uses so many mechanics that are in so many other games. It doesn't really do anything that's new or even do it really in an interesting way. It's just the same templates that a lot of other games use. I also mentioned that the closest comparison for this game is Raft, which that might actually be the best comparison for this game. It has nearly the same survival, crafting, and combat as Raft. Sure, there's extra stuff in there, like adding in a parry and a block system, which I don't think Raft has, but a lot of it is very close to Raft, where everything is a bar of some sort and you're trying to progress through a story by finding specific areas that could be a challenge to get into, or you have to find your way into there. I think it has a better story than Raft so far, but all the mechanics and everything like that is very similar to it. And that is honestly my first impressions of Grounded after playing just a bit over 10 hours of the game. And I hope you guys did find this kind of informative, maybe somewhat entertaining. If you did, I've got a playlist here with all of my 10-hour impression videos on it if you missed any of them. And here's my other most recent 10-hour impression that I did of Potion Permit. There is some stuff I may have gotten wrong in there and that I may need to make another video of to talk about, but here you go. And finally, if you do enjoy my content, please hit that subscribe button because it helps me out a lot more than you know. That may have been a little too ominous.